Hi everyone. So by now you know that yesterday's video didn't happen for some technical difficulties, but we're going to attempt to redo it now. What ended up happening is about 90% of the video that I shot, when I got it onto the computer to do editing, it didn't have any audio. Now I still don't know exactly what happened. I don't know if the mic failed or if the batteries were dead. I don't think it was the batteries, because there's a little light that comes on in the controller box when it's on and when everything's running, and the light was still on. So I don't know, I might just have a problem with the mic itself. But anyway, the advantage was it was a cooking video, and with a cooking video, most of the time what I'm doing is I'm pointing the camera at whatever it is I'm preparing. So the beauty of that is that video still exists, and I think I'm going to try and fix it today by doing some overdubbing. But there are a few scenes that I was actually pointing the camera at myself, so I'm going to have to reshoot those. But here we go with hopefully my restored version of yesterday's cooking vlog. Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. Alright, as you can tell, it's sort of a rainy day today, so that's going to kind of limit our outside options, because if I'm out wandering the trails, it's going to be really miserable going through the mud. And honestly, I can't really go out and do any museums or any of that kind of stuff, because that still hasn't completely opened up yet. So I'm kind of limited to things that I can do in my apartment. And right now that means either it's a "that's not how it's done" video. Why does that keep happening? I don't know. You know, I've run into this a bunch of times here on this video. I say "that's not how it's done," and the audio gets all weird on me. You know, I can say a bunch of other things and nothing happens, but you know, I can say like "that is not how it's done," and it just comes across as normal. But whenever I say "that's not how it's done," it just, I don't know. I got to look into that. One of the little mysteries of running a vlog. But anyway, let's get on with it. Today what we're going to do is we're going to do a cooking vlog, because that's really the only other thing we can do, except for, you know, that thing. But what we're going to do today is we're going to prepare something that I can do in the Instant Pot. This is one I found in one of those cookbooks that I picked up recently, and it looked pretty good. What it is, it's stew beef, olives, which I love olives, and feta cheese, and it's cooked on the Instant Pot, and you know, served over rice or potatoes, and it looks really good. So let's get going on that. Now I do have one more thing I want to talk about that was kind of interesting. When I was out buying the ingredients for this, like I said, it's raining right now, and when I was over at the grocery store, I am convinced that lightning struck the building while I was inside of it. Because it's funny, you know, this is a big metal building, and it's got this like metal framework that kind of holds the roof up. And at one point, I kind of heard what sounded like electricity arcing between all those little framework pieces in there. And about a quarter second later, I heard the thunderclap. And like I said, I'm convinced it hit the building. But that wasn't the end of the interesting part, because about a half a second after that, the lights went out in the store, and it was a black in there. Everyone in the place screamed when the lights went out, and you know, that kind of freaked us out. Now fortunately it wasn't that serious, because the lights came back on, you know, like after about a second. But everyone panicked there for a second, and there was a lot of mothers running after their children when the lights came back on. So that was kind of interesting. Now one little suggestion I would make to HEB: it's really dark in that store when the lights go out. You really should invest in emergency lighting, because that could have been a dangerous situation if the lights were out for any more than you know, a second. Just a thought. But anyway, let's get on with our cooking vlog. Now before we begin with most of this recipe, actually the recipe at the end says that you mix it with rice or potatoes, and while I think they're implying white rice, I'm actually going to use some wild rice, because I love wild rice. Now in the past, I've referred to this little handy dandy sheet that they included with the Instant Pot for guides as to how to cook things. This thing does have a recipe. Let's see if we can get it to focus here for us. There we go. This does have a recipe for wild rice, but I have found their wild rice recipe doesn't cut it. They recommend a 2-to-1 ratio for water, So if you have 1 cup of rice, they recommend 2 cups of water, and they recommend cooking for 20 to 25 minutes. My experience though is that that doesn't work that way. You have to submerge the rice in water. You can't just put a little bit of water in there and hope it gets wet. It may have to do with the fact that I have the 10-quart Instant Pot, but I've been usually going for about a 10-to-1 ratio. So I have 1 cup of wild rice here, and I'm going to pour it into 10 cups of water in the Instant Pot. Now, it also says cook it for 20 to 25 minutes. No, that ain't enough either. I cook it for an hour. And that's why we're going to do this first, because once I've cooked the rice, I can just keep it wet and I'll heat it up when I need it and we're good to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the lid on, close it, make sure that the pressure release valve is not released, because we want to do this under pressure. And rather than using the rice option, which kind of limits your options, I'm just going to do a pressure cook. Okay, we have a weather alert coming in here. Let's go listen to this.
National Weather Service in Fort Worth has issued a severe thunderstorm warning for northeastern Bell County and central Texas until 5 p.m. Central Daylight Time. At 4:14 p.m. Central Daylight Time, a severe thunderstorm was located over Temple, moving east at 15 miles per hour. Hazard, 60 miles per hour wind gusts and quarter-size hail. Source, radar indicated. Impact, hail damage to vehicles is expected. Expect wind damage to roofs, siding, and trees. Locations impacted include Temple, Belton, Morgan's Point Resort, Little River Academy, and Troy. This includes Interstate 35 between mile markers 293 and 309. For your protection, get inside a sturdy structure and stay away from windows.
Alright, so I'm also not going to use the rice option here because that's too limiting time-wise and stuff like that. I'm going to do a traditional pressure cook. We're going to move the timer up to 1 hour. And then we're just going to let that cook. We're already at high pressure, so we're going to hold it there and we're going to let it cook for an hour, and that should make our rice perfect. Alright, so here are the ingredients that we're going to use for today's recipe. First off, we're going to have 2 pounds of beef stew meat cubed into 2 inches, a little sea salt, some olives, 2 different types of olives, black olives and green olives, some olive oil. Now the recipe calls for about a tablespoon of that. I'm actually going to use a bit more because I have a big Instant Pot and I want to kind of cover the whole bottom. We're going to use some diced tomatoes. Now the requirement actually calls for spicy diced tomatoes, and I couldn't find that. So I'm going to augment things a little bit with some Tabasco sauce. Finally, we're going to coat the top of it with some feta cheese. But for now, our wild rice is complete, so I'm going to manually vent the pressure with the manual pressure release valve. Watch your finger for the hot steam, because you could burn yourself really easily on this. But there's our wild rice. That looks pretty good, right? Can you give it a little bit of stir here just to kind of mix it all up? But you remember in the past I've talked how you have to cook this for 36 hours in order to get this right? Yeah, I did this in 1 hour and it's perfect. Now all I got to do is, I do want to rinse it once, so I'm going to do a rinse cycle, and then we're going to put it back into another pot and just kind of keep it warm until we're ready for it. Alright, so here is the rice. What I've done is I've strained it through a colander and then rinsed some cold fresh water over it. Now I've placed it back into a pot again, brought it up to a boil, and we're just going to let it simmer now until we're ready for it. So the next thing we need to do now is get ready to saute our meat, because what we have to do is we have to brown it first before we mix in the other ingredients. So there's our 2 pounds of meat. I've already got it done. What I'm going to do, like I said, the recipe calls for about 1 tablespoon of olive oil. I'm actually going to use a lot more because I really want to coat the whole bottom of the inner pot from the Instant Pot. So got my oil in there. And now we're going to go down and we're going to press the saute button, and that's basically just going to turn the thing into a saute pan, and we're now heating up the oil. Once the oil is heated up, we'll place the meat in it. Now once the meat is properly browned, all of the rest of the ingredients need to be inserted immediately. So I've kind of measured everything out and opened everything up so that when the time comes I can just pour it all into the Instant Pot and keep going. So I got half a cup each of black and green olives. The black olives I actually had to slice myself. The greens were already done. I got some diced tomatoes. Now it actually calls for 4 cups of diced tomatoes. I couldn't make that happen exactly with the can, so we're going to have a little bit more tomatoes in our concoction than the recipe calls for, but it should be fine. And since I couldn't find the spicy diced tomatoes, I've measured out a little Tabasco sauce, about half a cup, and then some salt. And of course we have our feta cheese, and I'm just putting that aside because that doesn't go in right now. Alright, so our oil is heated up now, so I'm going to insert the meat, both packages, and I'm just going to kind of stir it around and keep it mixed now until we get a nice brown, kind of nice light brown coating on all sides of this. Like I said, most of the cooking that happens here will happen inside during the pressure cook phase of this, but this is just, you want to start off by browning your beef, and that's what we're doing right now. So I think now for the most part the meat is pretty much prepared to go here. There's still a little bit of pink on it, so I'm going to keep moving around a little bit, but other than that I think the meat is about ready. So in just a minute here we're going to throw in our extra ingredients. So in goes the tomatoes and the rest of the tomatoes and my olives and my Tabasco sauce, because you got to have that, right? And a little bit of salt. Salt sticking to the inside of the jar a little bit there. And then we're just going to kind of mix it up and get it nice and stirred in and mixed together. And once that's done, we're going to put it on the pressure cooker and we are going to cook for a while. It's starting to look pretty good, right? So next step now is we got to put the lid on there and lock it down. We're going to once again make sure that the pressure valve is set so that we're building a pressure, because that needs to happen. We'll notice now that since we used the saute function, it's still on, so we're going to press the cancel button to turn that off, because now we're going to go into pressure cook mode. And that involves pressing the pressure cook button. And you press that, and you notice that it already shows an hour on there, because it still remembers what the timing was when we cooked the rice. So we're going to reset that to 45 minutes. The pressure is going to remain at high, and after a couple seconds, the Instant Pot will come on and begin building up pressure. Alright, 45 minutes have passed, and it is now time to open this up and see what we ended up with. So I'm going to press the cancel button to turn off the heat, because we don't need to keep it warm anymore, and we are going to vent the pressure. Once again, watch your fingers. As always, you'll know when it's safe to open the lid when the little red button drops down. That means the pressure has been released. Once that happens, you can safely remove the lid. At this point, you're going to grab the handle from the top, rotate counterclockwise until it stops, and then lift up. Be aware that there may be a little bit of a vacuum that holds the lid down, so be prepared for that, and then drip the condensation back into the pot in order to avoid making a mess in your kitchen. Alright, so next thing I'm going to do is just get in here with a wooden spoon and kind of stir it all together. Looks pretty good though, doesn't it? First impressions, it smells good, it looks real good. I can't wait to try this out. So here's kind of the finished product now. I'm going to spread a little bit of the feta cheese, just basically. I like a lot of cheese on mine, so I'm going to actually put a lot of feta cheese on there, because I know that's going to really add to the flavor. But this looks really good. I'm actually looking forward to doing this, to trying this out. I got the wild rice on the bottom, and then just basically put everything else on top of that, and then of course the cheese on top of that. But yeah, this looks real tasty. I'm looking forward to this. Now normally during this part of my Bytes and Nibbles segment, I would show myself eating the food and giving a review of of the recipe. However, since that was a video that I shot where I actually shot my face and myself talking to the camera, it would look a little weird if I tried to overdub that. It would look like one of those Japanese Godzilla movies that they dubbed to English where the mouth movements don't match what's being said. And so I just elected to do this way. The food was really good. I was really impressed with it. Or I liked it with the wild rice. Some people that may not be your thing, but you could use white rice or you could use potatoes. I'm sure there's other things that would go with it too. So, go out and try whatever you feel is right on that. But I like the wild rice. I think that worked out really well. So it was a good meal. I'm glad I tried that one, and I will definitely add that to my repertoire of recipes to do in the future. It was a little bit runny, but I think that's because I put a little bit more of the tomatoes in there, but that isn't really a problem. I love tomatoes, and the whole recipe is pretty good. So, this is a good one. Definitely give it a shot if you're interested, if that looks good to you. I would like to take a moment to thank Janice Labuda for her PayPal contribution. Thank you so much. Janice included a little note with a contribution that says, "We enjoy your vlogs," and that she's glad that I'm a Texan now. Yeah, Janice, I'm glad too. I've been here a little bit over a year now, and this place just feels right to me. So thank you so much for your contribution. I appreciate it. And for the rest of you, I think that's all I have for today. It was a little weird having to do all the overdubs, but I hope you understand. I hope this video still turned out to be meaningful. I will post the recipe in the comment section below so you can check it out and see what's if you want to try this yourself. And other than that, I think that's all that I have for tonight. So thank you so much for watching, and bon appetit.